There's a moment just before sunrise when the world holds its breath, when the first sliver of light grazes the edge of an ancient column, and suddenly what was once stone becomes something alive. Picture the Parthenon, bathed in that golden glow, its ridges and grooves casting shadows so precise they seem to whisper stories from 2,000 years ago. This isn't just beauty, it's a conversation, a silent dialogue between light and shadow that has shaped how we experience the greatest architectural wonders of human history. And it's no accident. The architects of these timeless structures didn't just build walls and roofs, they choreographed the very way sunlight would dance across their creations, knowing that this interplay would transform cold marble into something that feels almost human. Think about the last time you stood inside a cathedral, where stained glass windows scatter colored light like fragments of heaven across the floor, or the way the pillars of Angkor Wat seem to shift and breathe as the sun moves overhead. These aren't just tricks of the eye, they're deliberate choices designed to evoke emotion, to connect us to something larger than ourselves. Light and shadow don't just illuminate architecture, they give it meaning. They turn a building into a story, a temple into a testament, a ruin into a relic that still speaks to us across centuries. And the most astonishing part, these effects were calculated long before the age of computers, relying on nothing but intuition, observation, and an almost spiritual understanding of the sun's path. So why does this matter today? Because when we learn to see architecture through this lens, we're not just admiring old stones, we're decoding a language. A language of reverence, of power, of hidden symbolism that transcends cultures and eras. From the pyramids of Egypt, where the equinox sun aligns with mathematical precision, to the Zen gardens of Kyoto, where shadows are as carefully curated as the rocks themselves, this dance of light and dark is a universal thread tying humanity's greatest achievements together. And as we journey through these spaces, you'll start to notice something extraordinary. The way a shadow falls can change how you feel, how you think, even how you remember a place. That's the magic. We're about to uncover the hidden poetry written in sunlight and shade, waiting for anyone who knows how to look. The Egyptians didn't just build pyramids, they engineered celestial mirrors. When the sun rose over the Nile on the summer solstice, the Great Pyramid's polished limestone casing would blaze like a second sun, its eastern face catching the light with such precision that the entire structure seemed to ignite. This wasn't just spectacle, it was a message carved in sunlight, declaring the pharaoh's divine connection to the gods. And they weren't alone. Half a world away, the Maya carved observatories into their temples, aligning windows so the equinox sun would pierce through like an arrow, illuminating hidden carvings of their rulers transformed into gods. These cultures, separated by oceans and centuries, shared the same revelation. Architecture could trap time itself, turning the sun's daily journey into a sacred clock. But shadow was just as powerful. In Greece, the Parthenon's columns weren't just stacked, they were subtly curved, a technique called entoses, so that at noon, when the sun hung directly overhead, the shadows between each column would appear perfectly straight, creating an illusion of impossible precision. Walk around the same structure at sunset, though, and those shadows stretch like fingers, revealing the column's true asymmetry. It was a silent lesson in humility. Even perfection bends to the light. Meanwhile, in India, the stepwells of Rajasthan plunged dozens of meters below ground, their cascading staircases designed so that even at midday, pockets of shadow would cling to the walls like cool water, offering respite from the desert sun. Here, shadow wasn't just absence, it was shelter, a living part of the architecture. What's astonishing is how these ancient builders worked without blueprints or calculators. They relied on oral traditions, lunar calendars, and tools as simple as a weighted string to track the sun's arc. At Newgrange in Ireland, a tomb older than the pyramids, a single narrow passage aligns with the winter solstice sunrise. For 17 minutes each year, sunlight floods the inner chamber, illuminating spirals carved into stone, a Neolithic artist's signature, visible only when the cosmos permitted. Mistakes weren't just costly, they were cosmic. When the Aztecs built Tenochtitlan's Templo Mayor, misaligning it by even a few degrees would have meant their sun god Huitzilopochtli might not descend at the appointed hour. The stakes were that high, yet this dance of light and shadow wasn't reserved for temples alone. Roman aqueducts used shadows cast by their arches to mark the hours, turning public works into sundials. In China, the Forbidden City's courtyards were spaced so that winter sunlight would reach deep into the halls, while summer eves cast cooling shade, a passive climate system written in geometry. Even today, when architects like Tadao Ando craft concrete walls so sheer that noon light slices across them like a blade, they're speaking the same ancient language. The tools have changed, but the poetry remains. Architecture isn't just about standing in light, it's about standing in time. Walk into Hagia Sophia at midday, and you'll understand why emperors called it heaven on earth. 40 windows pierce the base of its dome, not just to hold up the weight of the world above, but to dissolve it. Sunlight streams through, not as beams, but as a mist of gold, turning the mosaics into living things, each tessera catching the light like a fragment of the divine. This wasn't decoration, it was theology in stone and glass. The architects knew something profound. Light doesn't just reveal sacred spaces, it sanctifies them. Halfway across the world, the same truth unfolds in Kyoto's Kinkaku-ji, where the top 2 floors are sheathed in gold leaf. On still mornings, the pavilion doesn't reflect the pond beneath it, it becomes the pond, doubling the light until the boundary between earth and sky blurs. Here, gold isn't wealth, it's alchemy, transforming sunlight into a mirror of enlightenment. Even the placement is deliberate. The building faces west so the setting sun sets it ablaze, a daily reminder of impermanence in a faith that prizes transience. But perhaps no place marries light and ritual more intimately than Jerusalem's Church of the Holy Sepulchre. On the Saturday before Orthodox Easter, a miracle unfolds without human hands. A blue flame is said to leap from Christ's tomb, igniting candles throughout the darkened church. Whether divine intervention or physics, some suggest naphtha vents in the ancient stone, the effect is undeniable. For centuries, pilgrims have carried this light home in lanterns, a chain of fire stretching across continents. Its architecture as conductor, transforming sunlight into shared belief. Yet sacred light isn't always grand. In Japan's Eyes Shrine, rebuilt identically every 20 years, the morning sun strikes the fresh hinoki wood with such purity that the air itself smells sanctified. The shrine's eastward orientation ensures the first light touches the inner sanctuary, a ritual older than the written word. Meanwhile, in Iran's Nasir al-Mulk Mosque, stained glass transforms dawn into a kaleidoscope, pink and violet patterns rippling across Persian carpets like water. The effect lasts just minutes, a fleeting prayer made visible. What unites these spaces from candlelit crypts to glass-roofed cathedrals is intention. Gothic architects shaped their flying buttresses not just to support walls, but to free them for stained glass, turning biblical stories into luminous lessons. In Hindu temples, the Garbhagriha, the womb chamber housing the deity, is kept dark until ritual lamps reveal the god's face, a moment of revelation mirrored in every faith. Even in ruins, the pattern holds. When Spain's Mezquita became a cathedral, The new nave was carefully angled so Easter sunrise would flood the mihrab, blending two traditions in a single shaft of light. This symbolism transcends doctrine. Modern visitors to Sharter's Cathedral still pause where the noon sun, on the summer solstice, strikes a single brass nail in the floor, a pagan star in a Christian sky. Light, it seems, refuses to be bound by dogma. It's why a Buddhist monk, a Sufi mystic, and a Renaissance painter might all describe sacred radiance in the same words, as something that doesn't illuminate the divine but becomes it. And when we stand in these spaces today, we're not just observers. We're part of an unbroken chain, every squint against the glare, every shaded eye, a silent echo of the first worshipper who saw the light and called it holy. Shadow doesn't just conceal, it speaks. Take Borobudur at dawn, where the first rays of sun crawl up its terraces like an archaeologist's brush, revealing carved scenes of enlightenment one panel at a time. The shadows clinging to the lower reliefs aren't empty space. They're pauses in the story, deliberate gaps that make the emerging light feel like a revelation. It's a technique as old as storytelling itself. What's hidden pulls us forward, urging us to step closer, to lean in. The Alhambra masters this art, its pierced screens casting lace-like shadows that shift with the sun, transforming courtyards into living parchment. One moment, the walls tell of a sultan's triumph. The next, the pattern dissolves into abstraction, leaving only the ghost of a tale half-remembered. This interplay isn't just beautiful, it's psychological. Gothic cathedrals exploited it masterfully. Walk down the nave of Sharter's, and the columns nearest the windows stand bathed in light, while those farther back recede into gloom. The effect isn't accidental. It mimics a forest at dusk where sunlight filters unevenly through leaves. Our brains, wired to find meaning in such contrasts, interpret the space as both sanctuary and labyrinth, a push and pull of comfort and awe. Even the imperfections serve the story. The leaning walls of Italy's Torre Garicenda were never corrected because the slanting shadows they cast at sunset added drama to Bologna's skyline, turning a structural flaw into a civic emblem. But shadows do more than embellish, they manipulate scale. In Persia's Friday Mosque, the deep recesses of the Iwan vaults swallow sunlight whole, making the archways appear to stretch endlessly upward. Stand beneath them, and the shadows overhead compress the space around you, amplifying the sudden vastness when you step into the sunlit courtyard. It's a trick borrowed from theater. Shakespeare's Globe used similar contrasts, with actors moving between torchlight and darkness to heighten tension. Architecture borrowed the technique, using shadow to direct attention like a stage director's spotlight. The tomb of Humayun in Delhi takes this further, its jolly screens carving sunlight into geometric verses that migrate across the floor with the hours, turning mourners into actors in a celestial play. Perhaps the most profound power of shadow lies in its ambiguity. In Japan's Ryon-ji, the famous rock garden's 15 stones are never all visible at once from any angle. The shadows between them force the viewer to move, to engage, to complete the composition in their mind. It's a visual haiku, the emptiness as vital as the form. Moorish architects understood this too. The honeycombed ceilings of the Alcazar's Hall of Ambassadors drip with mock-Arab stalactites, their shadows pooling so thickly that the boundary between solid and void dissolves. Here, shadow isn't passive, it sculpts. It turns plaster into clouds, weight into weightlessness. Modern architects still wield this tool. Louis Kahn's Salk Institute Courtyard in California is a study in shadow's narrative power. The narrow water channel running through it catches the noon sun like a blade, but as afternoon falls, the shadows of the flanking laboratories creep inward, narrowing the strip of light until it vanishes, a daily allegory of scientific pursuit, bright certainty giving way to the unknown. Shadow, then, isn't light's opposite. It's the quiet collaborator in every architectural story, the space where imagination rushes in to fill the gaps. Whether in a Javanese temple or a Manhattan skyscraper, the darkest corners are never empty. They're where the building whispers its secrets, waiting for someone to listen. There's a quiet genius hiding in the way sunlight splinters across a muqarna's vault, those honeycombed ceilings of Islamic architecture that turn beams into geometric lace. What looks like pure ornament is actually precise physics. Each tiny niche and shelf is angled to catch light at different times of day, breaking it into fractal patterns that shift with the sun's arc. In Spain's Alhambra, this wasn't just decoration. It was celestial mathematics carved in plaster, a way to make the infinite feel tangible. Step into the hall of the Abencerrage, and the domed ceiling dissolves into a constellation of star-like shapes, not because the artists loved stars, but because they understood how light would scatter across three-dimensional geometry. Baroque architects played a different game with perception. Walk into Rome's Church of Sant'Ignazio, and you'll swear the ceiling opens straight to heaven, until you realize the dome is flat. A masterful trompe l'oeil painted to trick the eye into seeing depth where none exists. The secret, shadows. Andrea Pozzo studied how light falls on real curves, then replicated those gradients in fresco, using false darkness to simulate volume. It's neuroscience in pigment. Our brains, trained by millennia of interpreting shadows, fill in the third dimension. Even the cracks in the dome are painted, their jagged lines calculated to align with the church's real windows, so natural light reinforces the illusion. No structure marries time and light more literally than Rome's Pantheon. That famous Oculus isn't just a hole, it's a cosmic clock. At noon on the summer solstice, the sunbeam strikes a metal grill above the door, a marker so precise it may have helped regulate the Roman calendar. But the real magic happens in April. On the 21st, the city's founding date, the midday light aligns perfectly with the entrance, flooding the doorway in a golden rectangle. Was this intentional? The precision suggests so. The dome's coffered ceiling, often mistaken for decoration, actually standardizes the light's path. Each recessed panel helps the beam travel smoothly, turning architecture into a sundial with imperial propaganda etched in sunlight. Today, we can recreate these effects with Heliodon-specialized lamps that simulate the sun's angle at any latitude, any hour. When researchers tested the Pantheon's Oculus with one, they found the beam's movement matches ancient descriptions of solstice rituals down to the minute. Even more astonishing, muqarna's patterns, when modeled digitally, produce light distributions that align with 13th century Persian treatises on optics. These weren't happy accidents, they were calculations passed down through guilds, where master builders taught apprentices to read light like musicians read sheet music. The irony is delicious. Our ancestors, armed with nothing but string and intuition, engineered spaces that modern software confirms as optically perfect. In France's Charter's Cathedral, the exact thickness of stained glass was determined by how deeply colored light should penetrate the nave, a formula derived from monks observing decades of sunrises. Meanwhile, India's Jantar Mantar Observatory uses colossal stone instruments to cast shadows accurate enough to measure time within seconds. These weren't just buildings, they were equations rendered in stone where aesthetics and astronomy shared the same blueprint. So the next time light draws a perfect square on your floor at a certain hour, pause. You're not just seeing beauty, you're witnessing the silent dialogue between art and calculus, where every shadow is a calculation and every beam a carefully plotted verse in an ancient, universal poem. Charter's Cathedral's windows don't just tell stories, they perform them. Take the famous Blue Virgin window, where cobalt glass filters sunlight into a hue so profound it seemed to medieval worshippers like liquid divinity. This wasn't just blue, it was ultramarine, a pigment once more precious than gold, made from lapis lazuli hauled from Afghanistan. The craftsmen knew its rarity would telegraph the Virgin's sanctity, but they went further. The glass is thickest at the bottom, thinning as it rises, so the color intensifies toward heaven, a visual crescendo pulling eyes upward. At midday, when the sun hits just right, the entire north transept becomes a cascade of sapphire, as if the sky itself were pouring into the nave. This chromatic theology extended to the very molecules in the glass. Red windows, symbolizing Christ's sacrifice, got their ruby tones from gold chloride, while green, representing resurrection, came from copper oxides. The artisans weren't just mixing chemicals, they were encoding doctrine. Notice how the Jesse tree window's emerald leaves seem to tremble in the light. That's no illusion. Medieval glass contains microscopic bubbles and irregularities, scattering sunlight into a shimmer that mimics living foliage. To a 12th century farmer, this wasn't a picture of a tree, it was the tree of life itself, vibrating with sacred energy. The cathedral's architects even weaponized the sun's path. Summer solstice light streams through the western rose window at an angle that sets the Last Judgment scene ablaze, the damned writhing in shadows while the saved glow like candles. Come winter, that same window dims, its colors deepening into Advent solemnity. This wasn't passive symbolism, it was liturgical stagecraft, syncing heaven's light with the church calendar. Pilgrims arriving for the Feast of the Assumption in August would find the Virgin's coronation window radiant at high noon, as if Mary herself were being crowned by the sun. Modern spectrographs reveal another layer of genius. The blue glass absorbs ultraviolet light, creating a cool, otherworldly glow that contrasts sharply with the warm reds and yellows of biblical scenes. Scientists now suspect this contrast reduced eye strain for medieval worshippers during hours-long services, making sacred narratives easier to absorb. Even the placement was pedagogical. Scenes from Genesis cluster near the floor where children could see them, while complex apocalypse cycles hover above, their details visible only to educated clergy. Yet Sharter's true masterstroke lies in what's missing. The cathedral's famed labyrinth, inlaid in the floor, was designed to be walked at dusk, when fading light would force pilgrims to rely on touch rather than sight, a metaphor for faith's journey into the unknown. And on the rare days when fog rolls in from the Beauce Plains, the stained glass doesn't darken. It softens, turning the entire cathedral into a blurred vision of paradise, proving that even obscurity could serve the divine. Here, light wasn't just a tool, it was the medium through which stone and glass transcended into sacrament. Rome's pantheon doesn't just stand beneath the sky, it captures it. That massive Oculus, wide enough to fit a modern bus, isn't merely an architectural flourish. It's a carefully calibrated instrument, turning the entire building into a cosmic sundial. Picture standing inside on a clear April morning, watching as the sunbeam creeping across the marble floor slows, then stops, a perfect circle of light framing the doorway at precisely noon. This alignment on Rome's birthday wasn't coincidence. It was celestial theater, a way for emperors to literally bask in divine favor as sunlight crowned the entrance like a halo. But the pantheon's relationship with light runs deeper than symbolism. The dome's coffered ceiling, often admired for its geometric beauty, serves a hidden purpose. Each recessed panel acts like a baffle in a camera, diffusing the sun's harsh rays into a soft, even glow that moves predictably across the interior. On the winter solstice, when the sun hangs low, the beam climbs the wall to illuminate the niche where statues of gods once stood. Come summer, it pools directly beneath the oculus, mirroring the dome's curvature in a fleeting demonstration of sacred geometry. Even the floor plays its part. Its slight convexity ensures rainwater from the open roof drains efficiently while making the light's movement appear smoother, almost liquid. Then there's the rain. While modern architects might panic at the thought of a gaping hole in their roof, the Pantheon embraces it. During storms, water falls through the oculus in a shimmering column, pooling briefly on the porous travertine before vanishing into hidden drains. The effect is magical. Droplets catch the dim light like falling stars, turning weather into spectacle. Ancient Romans saw this as more than practicality. It was the building breathing, its connection to the heavens made visible. What's often overlooked is how the Pantheon manipulates shadow to heighten this drama. The thickness of the walls creates deep niches that stay in perpetual twilight, making the moving sunlight seem even brighter by contrast. At certain hours, the interplay transforms statues into silhouettes, their features vanishing until all that remains is their outline against the luminous marble, a visual metaphor for the boundary between mortal and divine. Modern laser scans reveal even more sophistication. The oculus isn't perfectly centered. It's offset by just enough to account for atmospheric refraction, ensuring the sun's apparent position aligns with the markings below. And the dome's concrete mix changes as it rises, growing lighter near the top to reduce stress while maintaining the precise curvature needed to track celestial movements. This wasn't just architecture, it was astronomy rendered in stone, a building that didn't just observe the cosmos but conversed with it. The true genius lies in how these effects scale. Whether you're a senator standing beneath the oculus or a slave mopping the floor, the light performs the same dance. The Pantheon democratized the divine, offering everyone inside, regardless of status, a front-row seat to the universe's rhythms. Today, when tourists gasp as the equinox light strikes a particular column or rain transforms the space into a temporary planetarium, they're participating in a 2,000-year-old ritual. The Pantheon proves great architecture doesn't just shelter us from the elements, it makes us partners in their eternal cycle. In Japan, light isn't just seen, it's felt. Walk into a traditional tea house at dawn, and you'll find no harsh beams slicing through the space, only a gentle glow seeping through shoji screens like honey through cloth. These paper partitions don't block the sun, they collaborate with it, transforming direct sunlight into a diffused, ever-shifting tapestry. At Kyoto's Katsura Imperial Villa, this principle reaches its zenith. The villa's designers positioned windows not just to frame the garden outside, but to dissolve the boundary between inside and out. On a still morning, the reflection of maple leaves trembles across the floor, as if the room itself has grown roots. This is shake, borrowed scenery, where architecture doesn't dominate nature but becomes its canvas, yet darkness holds equal weight in this delicate balance. Step inside a Zen temple like Kyoto's Ryoan-ji, and you'll notice how the dim interior amplifies the smallest flicker of candlelight. The shadows here aren't mere absence, they're a concept often translated as negative space, but more accurately understood as a kind of charged silence. In the rock garden, raked gravel swirls around boulders, their shadows stretching and shrinking with the sun's arc. The emptiness between stones isn't empty at all. It's where the mind wanders, where meaning arises from what's not said. This is architecture as meditation, where every beam and shadow invites you to pause, to notice, to complete the composition with your own perception. Consider the way a single lantern illuminates a tokonoma alcove in a traditional home. The light doesn't flood the space, it grazes the edge of a scroll or a single flower arrangement, leaving the rest in soft obscurity. This deliberate restraint stems from wabi-sabi, the embrace of imperfection and transience. A crackled glaze on a teacup, the uneven grain of wood, these flaws catch the light differently each day, reminding us that beauty lies in change. At Naoshima's art house project, contemporary architects take this further, embedding glass floors that reveal tidal pools beneath, or designing walls that shimmer like fish scales when rain streaks down. Here, light doesn't just reveal, it participates in the building's life. The genius of Japanese design lies in its humility. Unlike Western cathedrals that reach for the heavens, a Sukiya-zukuri tea house kneels close to the earth, its low eaves casting deep shadows that cool the air in summer while allowing winter sun to slide beneath. At Ai's Jingu, rebuilt identically every 20 years, the fresh hinoki wood absorbs light differently with each iteration. The scent, the texture, even the sound of footsteps shifting as the structure weathers. This cyclical renewal isn't just preservation, it's a dialogue with time itself, acknowledging that even the most exquisite craftsmanship is fleeting. Modern architects like Tadao Ando inherit this philosophy, using raw concrete not as a cold modern statement, but as a backdrop for light's poetry. His Church of the Light in Osaka is a masterclass in minimalism. A stark cross cut into the wall becomes a prism, splitting sunlight into a blade of radiance that moves across the pews like a sundial. The effect is both serene and startling, a reminder that sacredness doesn't require grandeur, just intention. Similarly, Tokyo's Nezu Museum blends old and new, its glass corridors reflecting a garden where light filters through centuries-old pines, dappling the path with shadows that feel both ancient and alive. What unites these spaces, from imperial villas to subway stations with skylights designed to mirror the stars, is their refusal to treat light as static. A shoji screen's glow at noon differs from its moonlight shimmer. A bamboo grove's shadow at dusk carries a different weight than at dawn. This isn't just aesthetics, it's a worldview. In Japan, architecture doesn't fight time. It dances with it, acknowledging that the most profound beauty often lies in what's here one moment and gone the next. To stand in these spaces isn't just to observe light and shadow. It's to feel deeply and wordlessly that you're part of their fleeting, perfect collaboration. Gothic architects didn't just build upward, they engineered illumination. Those towering stained glass windows, like the ones in Sainte-Chapelle, weren't merely decorative, they were theological arguments written in light. Every pane served as a luminous manuscript, telling biblical stories to a largely illiterate congregation. The deeper blues at the top of the windows, fading to lighter hues below, weren't accidental. They mimicked the heavens, creating a gradient that made the ceiling seem to vanish into eternity. At noon on the summer solstice, sunlight would strike the chapel's relics with such precision that the golden reliquary appeared to ignite, as if heaven itself had reached down to sanctify the space. But this vertical light wasn't just about awe, it was about hierarchy. Notice how the lower windows in Sharter's Cathedral depict earthly scenes, farmers tilling fields, merchants haggling in markets. As your gaze travels upward, the subjects ascend two saints, angels, and finally, at the clerestory level, Christ in majesty. The architecture literally elevates the sacred, using light as a guide. Even the ribbed vaults play their part. Their converging lines act like arrows, drawing the eye along the same upward trajectory. It's no coincidence that Gothic builders called this style opus franciginum, French work. They knew they weren't just constructing buildings, they were crafting spiritual ladders. The real magic lies in how these cathedrals harness time. The rose window at Notre Dame de Paris isn't just a circular masterpiece, it's a celestial clock. On the winter solstice, when daylight is scarcest, the low sun aligns perfectly with its center, flooding the nave with a warmth that feels miraculous in the cold. Come spring, the light shifts to illuminate the resurrection scenes in the north transept, syncing with Easter celebrations. Modern laser scans reveal the windows leading. The metal framework holding the glass isn't uniform. The pieces are slightly thicker where the sun strikes hardest, diffusing the light to prevent glare while maintaining brilliance. This wasn't guesswork, it was optics refined over generations of trial and error. What's often overlooked is the role of darkness in this symphony. Gothic cathedrals need their shadows as much as their light. The deep recesses of side chapels, the gloom of the ambulatory, these contrasts make the illuminated areas feel even more divine. In Canterbury Cathedral, the martyrdom site of Thomas Becket is deliberately underlit, forcing pilgrims to strain forward, mimicking the effort of spiritual pursuit. Then, as they step into the choir, suddenly awash in light from the lofty windows, the release is visceral. Darkness wasn't the absence of God, it was the necessary foil to revelation. Today, we can quantify what medieval builders intuited. Spectrometers show that Sharter's blue glass filters out harsh ultraviolet rays while amplifying cooler wavelengths, creating a visual serenity that modern researchers link to lowered heart rates. The reds, rich in iron oxide, cast a warmth that counteracts the northern European chill, a kind of thermal storytelling where light comforts as it teaches. Even the cathedral's famous labyrinth, walked at dusk, uses fading light as part of its meditative practice. As the sun dips, the path becomes harder to see, echoing the soul's journey from certainty to faith. Perhaps the most profound lesson lies in the imperfections. Gothic glass isn't flawless, its bubbles and ripples scatter light unpredictably, making the colors shimmer like living things. The architect's new perfection wasn't the goal, transcendence was. When a storm rolls in and the windows dim, or when winter light slants low and turns the nave into a corridor of gold, the building reminds us that the divine isn't constant. It's fleeting, conditional, and all the more precious for it. In these spaces, light isn't just something you see, it's something you feel in your bones, a silent sermon written in wavelengths older than stone. Baroque architects didn't just design buildings, they orchestrated emotions in stone and sunlight. Take Bernini's Cornaro Chapel, where a hidden window above St. Teresa's statue bathes her face in celestial gold, while the rest of the alcove drowns in shadow. This isn't illumination, it's revelation, transforming marble into a living vision of divine ecstasy. The effect is so calculated that visitors standing at the chapel entrance see Teresa's face glow as if lit from within, while the writhing folds of her robes disappear into darkness, a visual metaphor for the soul's struggle between earthly weight and heavenly rapture. Even the chapel's side walls, lined with sculpted witnesses from the Cornaro family, are strategically placed. They're not mere spectators. Their half-lit faces reflect the drama, pulling viewers into the scene as participants rather than observers. But Baroque light wasn't confined to churches. Versailles' Hall of Mirrors turned illumination into imperial propaganda. At night, thousands of candles multiplied endlessly in the facing glass, creating an ocean of flame that left ambassadors speechless. The mirrors weren't just decorative, they were psychological weapons, disorienting visitors with reflections that made the already vast hall seem infinite. Louis XIV knew the power of spectacle. When sunlight streamed through the windows by day, it ricocheted off gilded statues and crystal chandeliers, ensuring every surface shimmered like the Sun King himself. Even the gardens played their part, with fountains timed to catch the afternoon light, spraying liquid gold into the air at precisely the hour courtiers gathered for promenade. What made Baroque light so revolutionary was its movement. Unlike the static glow of Gothic cathedrals, Baroque spaces thrived on change. In Rome's Sant'Andrea al Quirinale, sunlight creeps across the floor like a slow-motion sundial, gradually revealing hidden details in the dome's frescoes, angels emerging from clouds, rays bursting through painted heavens. The architect Borromini designed the church's oval shape to compress and expand shadows with the sun's arc, making the walls seem to breathe. This kinetic quality extended to materials. Bernini often used different grades of marble in a single sculpture, knowing sunlight would highlight the Virgin's delicate face in Carrara, while leaving the coarser stone of her robes in shadow, creating contrasts as vivid as any painting. The era's love of drama spilled into domestic spaces too. Venetian palazzos featured mirror stairs, glass panels angled to bounce candlelight from floor to floor, turning a simple ascent into a procession of flickering reflections. Even the humble confessional got a Baroque makeover. Priests sat in shadowed booths while penitents knelt in pooled light, a visual reminder of revelation emerging from darkness. This theatricality wasn't mere decoration. It reflected the Counter-Reformation's urgency to make faith visceral, immediate. When Caravaggio painted chiaroscuro masterpieces, architects answered in 3 dimensions, crafting spaces where light didn't just fall, it struck like lightning, revealing truth in flashes. Modern theaters owe their lighting techniques to these innovations. The Baroque stage's gloomy glory system, using oil lamps with reflective backdrops to simulate sunrise or hellfire, paved the way for today's spotlights and gels. But perhaps the most enduring legacy is the understanding that light shapes behavior. In St. Peter's Basilica, the baldacchino's twisted columns catch the morning sun first, drawing pilgrims' eyes to the altar before they've even entered. Every shadow, every gleam was a silent sermon, proving architecture could move hearts as powerfully as any sermon. When we stand in these spaces today, we're not just seeing light, we're feeling centuries of carefully crafted awe, a reminder that stone can weep, sing, or tremble, if only the light knows where to touch it. Modernism didn't just change architecture, it redefined how buildings speak with light. Take Le Corbusier's Ronchamp Chapel, where those thick, undulating walls aren't just structural, they're light traps. Each irregular window, some no wider than a hand, is angled to scoop sunlight into precise pools that migrate across the rough concrete floor like living stains. One moment, a beam might illuminate the Virgin statue. The next, it slid away, leaving only the ghost of its glow. This isn't randomness, it's choreography. Corbusier spent years sketching the sun's path across the hilltop, designing apertures that would transform harsh noon light into something almost tactile by afternoon. The result, a space where light doesn't just enter, it performs. Tadao Ando took this further, turning shadow into sacrament. His Church of the Light in Osaka is just a concrete box bisected by a single cruciform slit, no stained glass, no gold leaf. Yet when morning sun pierces that cross, the entire wall seems to hover, the beam so sharp you could cut your finger on it. The magic lies in the contrast. The brutal weight of the concrete makes the light feel fragile, precious, like something that might vanish if you blink. Ando's genius was recognizing that emptiness could be sacred too. The shadowed corners aren't neglected. They're the silence between musical notes, making the light's appearance feel like revelation. But modernism's light play wasn't confined to chapels. Manhattan's Lever House proved even corporate towers could become light sculptures. That glass curtain wall wasn't just a skin, it was a trick of perception. On cloudy days, the building dissolves into the sky. At sunset, it becomes a prism splitting fire across Park Avenue. Architect Gordon Bunshat took inspiration from Mies van der Rohe's Farnsworth House, where floor-to-ceiling glass erased the boundary between forest and living room. The lesson, transparency isn't just a style, it's a way of making architecture breathe with the rhythms of weather and time. What unites these spaces is their radical honesty. Where Gothic cathedrals disguised structure with flying buttresses, modernism celebrated it. Louis Kahn's Salk Institute exposes its concrete bones, letting shadows carve sharp geometries into the courtyard at noon. By evening, those same shadows stretch into abstract brushstrokes, turning the plaza into a sundial only the scientists inside could fully decipher. Even the water channel running through it serves a dual purpose. By day, it mirrors the sky. By night, it catches moonlight, guiding footsteps without a single electric bulb. The real surprise, how ancient this modernity feels. When Carlo Scarpa designed the Brion Cemetery in Italy, he used slender slits to cast light on graves in precise seasonal patterns, a technique straight from Newgrange's Neolithic tomb. And Richard Meyer's white surfaces, like those at the Getty Center, bounce Southern California's glare into a diffuse glow reminiscent of Greek temples' lost marble polish. Maybe that's modernism's secret. By stripping away ornament, it didn't abandon tradition, it rediscovered light's oldest magic. The kind that doesn't need gold leaf to feel divine, just a wall angled exactly right to catch the dawn. The Taj Mahal's marble isn't just white, it's a chameleon. At dawn, the pink-tinged stone mirrors the rising sun, softening the mausoleum's edges into something almost ethereal. By midday, it's a blazing mirror, reflecting the sky so perfectly that the dome seems to dissolve into the heavens. And come moonlight, the same marble turns liquid silver, as if the building has been dipped in mercury. This metamorphosis wasn't accidental. Mughal architects sourced marble from Makrana, a quarry whose crystalline structure scatters light in a way no other stone can. They polished it to a sheen so fine that every sunrise and sunset would rewrite the monument's mood, turning grief into something luminous. Glass sings a different song. In St. Denis's Abbey, where Abbot Suger first championed stained glass in the 12th century, the windows don't just filter light, they transubstantiate it. The deep cobalt blues made from rare cobalt oxide absorb red wavelengths, casting a cool, otherworldly glow that medieval worshippers described as lux nova, new light. But step closer and you'll notice the glass isn't smooth. Medieval artisans left intentional bubbles and striations, knowing these imperfections would fracture sunlight into prismatic shards, making biblical scenes shimmer like living visions. Even the lead cames holding the glass aren't neutral. Their dark lines act like a painter's outlines, preventing the colors from bleeding into chaos. Then there's Gaudi's mosaics in Barcelona's Park Güell, where broken tiles discards from local workshops become alchemy. His Trencaddy's technique isn't just whimsy, it's physics. Each ceramic fragment angles slightly differently, catching light at unpredictable moments. A dragon's scales might flash emerald 1 second, then gold the next, as if the creature were breathing. This kinetic quality mirrors nature's own playfulness. Think of sunlight dappling through leaves or flickering on water. Gaudi didn't invent beauty, he borrowed it from the world, then amplified it through refraction. But roughness has its own eloquence. In Ethiopia's Lalibela, monolithic churches carved from volcanic rock prove that even the most austere material can soften under light's touch. At noon, the cross-shaped windows of Bitegiogis cast sharp shadows across its sunken courtyard, the lines so precise they could be drawn with a ruler. Yet return in late afternoon, and those same edges blur, the rock's pocked surface glowing amber as if lit from within. The architects knew something profound. Light doesn't just reveal texture, it collaborates with it, turning chisel marks into brushstrokes. Metal, often dismissed as cold, proves equally versatile. Consider the golden dome of Jerusalem's Dome of the Rock. Its anodized aluminum coating, replacing the original lead in the 1960s, was engineered to reflect sunlight without glare, creating a halo effect visible for miles. Meanwhile, in India, the Harmandir Sahib's gilded panels scatter light across the Amritsar pool, not as a single blinding flash, but as thousands of rippling points, a visual echo of Sikhism's belief in the divine's infinite facets. The lesson is clear: materials aren't just what buildings are made of, they're how buildings speak. A Gothic cathedral's limestone whispers penitence, while a Baroque church's gilded stucco shouts ecstasy. Modern architects like Herzog and de Meuron understand this, using materials like oxidized copper or translucent marble to make light itself a building's facade. When you stand before a great structure, you're not just seeing stone or glass. You're hearing a conversation that began millennia ago, when the first builder noticed how dawn light could turn a cave's rough wall into something sacred. There's something almost sacred about how certain buildings change with the seasons, not just enduring them, but embracing them, turning shifts in light and weather into moments of quiet drama. Take Newgrange, that ancient Irish tomb older than the pyramids. For 364 days a year, its inner chamber lies in darkness, a silent vault of stone. But on the winter solstice, as if by some prehistoric appointment, a narrow beam of sunlight creeps through the roof box, crawling inch by inch down the passageway until it ignites the back wall in gold. 17 minutes, that's all the time the builders allowed for this celestial spectacle, a fleeting burst of light in the year's deepest dark. It wasn't just a calendar, it was hope carved in stone, a promise that even in winter's grip, the sun would return. Now cross the world to Kyoto, where the golden pavilion, Kinkaku-ji, wears the seasons like changing robes. In autumn, maple leaves blaze around it, their crimson doubling in the pond below until the whole scene seems dipped in fire. Come winter, snow muffles the gardens, and the pavilion's gold, no longer competing with nature's palette, becomes a single brushstroke of warmth against the monochrome. The architects knew something profound: beauty isn't static. By orienting the structure to catch the low winter sun, they ensured it would glow even on the shortest days, a lantern against the cold. This dialogue between architecture and the seasons isn't confined to ancient sites. Peter Zumthor's Therme Vals in Switzerland takes its cues from the alpine valley it nestles in. The spa's concrete slabs, rough as mountain stone, are sliced with narrow slits that angle the light differently in December than in June. Winter sun, pale and slanted, stripes the steam rooms with long, lazy beams, while summer light, high and bright, turns the pools into grids of liquid gold. Even the steam rising from the water changes with the air's temperature, thick and ghostly in winter, wispy and quick to disperse in summer. Zumthor didn't just build a spa, he bottled the valley's rhythms. What these designs share is a refusal to see seasons as obstacles. The Mayans went further, turning entire cities into seasonal instruments. At Chichen Itza, the pyramid of El Castillo becomes a serpent at the equinoxes, shadows slithering down its steps to meet stone carvings at the base. In Morocco, the Ben Youssef Madrasa's courtyard tiles cool under summer's scorch but trap winter's feeble warmth, passively regulating temperatures centuries before the term sustainability existed. Even in modern Copenhagen, the Titjen Collegiate dormitory's circular form ensures every student apartment gets winter sunlight, while its overhangs block summer glare. The magic lies in anticipation, the way these spaces teach us to watch for light's subtle shifts. In Japan, the thatched roofs of Shirakawa go steepen in winter to shed heavy snow, their angles calculated so precisely that February sun still reaches the lower windows. Meanwhile, in Arizona, the ancient Sinagua built their cliff dwellings under overhangs that shaded them in summer but let winter light pour in. These weren't just shelters, they were almanacs in rock, their very shapes encoding generations of sky watching. Perhaps that's the greatest lesson these time-literate buildings offer. Architecture isn't just about space. It's about time, about marking its passage not with clocks, but with shadows and reflections, with stone that warms and glass that glows. When a building notices the seasons, it reminds us to notice them too, to look up when the solstice light hits just right, to pause when the autumn reflection floats across the water. In a world of electric bulbs and climate control, these structures whisper that there's still poetry in the tilt of the earth, that even now, 5,000 years after Newgrange, sunlight can still surprise us. Cities transform sunlight into theater. Take Manhattanhenge, that magical moment when the setting sun aligns perfectly with New York's grid, flooding every cross street from 14th to 155th with liquid gold. It's no accident. The city's rigid east-west streets were laid out in 1811 precisely to catch this light, turning urban planning into celestial choreography twice a year. But the metropolis plays with shadows just as deftly. Walk down Wall Street at midday, and the towering skyscrapers compress sunlight into narrow ribbons, creating stripes of warmth amid the chill of perpetual shade. These aren't just aesthetic effects, they're survival tactics. The same canyons that freeze in winter become wind tunnels of relief in summer, their shadows acting as natural air conditioning long before glass towers needed mechanical cooling. London's walkie-talkie building taught a stark lesson in light's power. Its concave facade once focused sunlight into a death ray hot enough to fry eggs on the sidewalk and warp parked cars. Architects scrambled to retrofit the glass with sun-shading fins, but the incident revealed an ancient truth. Cities have always been laboratories of light manipulation. Venice knew this centuries ago. Its narrow calli aren't just charming alleyways, they're climate control, they're tight turns designed to funnel breezes while casting cooling shadows over canals. The city's famous shutters, direct descendants of Roman velaria, adjustable awnings used in the Colosseum to shade spectators from midday glare. Modern skylines continue this dialogue with smarter tools. Dubai's Burj Khalifa wears a cloak of reflective glass that shifts from mirror to mirage as the sun moves, its surface embedded with micro-aluminum panels to deflect heat without sacrificing light. In Seoul, the Lot World Tower's curved facade mimics traditional Korean pottery, scattering sunlight evenly to prevent the kind of solar scorching that plagued London. Even humble materials get reinvented. Tokyo's Pixel Wave installation uses thousands of rotating aluminum panels to cast ever-changing shadow mosaics across a plaza, turning a lunch hour into a light show. Yet some of the most ingenious solutions come from the past. Marrakech's Medina, a maze of rose-hued walls, stays cool under the Moroccan sun thanks to a geometry perfected over centuries. The alleys narrow just before noon, creating overlapping shadows that drop temperatures by nearly 20 degrees. Meanwhile, the wooden lattices of Mashrabiyah screens filter sunlight into dappled patterns while allowing breezes to pass, a passive cooling system so effective it's being revived in sustainable architecture from Cairo to California. What unites these examples, ancient and cutting-edge, is their recognition that urban light isn't just functional, it's emotional. The way sunset gilds a Parisian balcony, or how neon bleeds across Tokyo's wet pavement after rain, these moments make cities feel alive. Architects from Zaha Hadid to the anonymous builders of Fez's Medina share the same goal, not to banish shadows but to collaborate with them, because when light and darkness dance well, even a subway tunnel at dusk can become a cathedral of fleeting gold. Light doesn't just illuminate power, it becomes power. Consider the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, where Louis XIV didn't just hang chandeliers, he weaponized them. 17 towering fixtures, each holding 20 candles, multiplied into infinity by the facing mirrors, creating a sea of flame so dazzling it left visiting ambassadors physically disoriented. This wasn't just opulence, it was psychological warfare, a visual declaration that the Sun King's radiance could outshine even the heavens. The message was clear: stand in this light, and you're standing in the presence of a man who'd harnessed the cosmos itself. But light's political theater took a darker turn in the 20th century. Albert Speer's Cathedrals of Light for Nazi rallies transformed anti-aircraft spotlights into pillars of pure radiance, their beams stretching so high they vanished into the night sky. The effect was calculated terror, architecture stripped down to its most primal element, light as a blade cutting through darkness to declare invincibility. Yet for all its brute force, the spectacle had a fatal flaw. Like the regime it celebrated, the illusion relied on constant energy, collapsing the moment the generators shut down. Now contrast that with the Berlin Holocaust Memorial's field of stelae. Here, shadow isn't an accident, it's the language. The uneven concrete blocks create a disorienting play of light and dark, their stark geometry casting jagged patterns that shift with the sun. On overcast days, the slabs seem to merge into a single mass of gray. At noon, their sharp edges throw knife-like shadows across the ground. The design doesn't guide your gaze, it scatters it, forcing you to navigate absence rather than presence. Where Speer's spotlights scream domination, Peter Eisenman's memorial whispers loss, using light's absence to make the vanished tangible. Across the Atlantic, Washington, D.C.'s Lincoln Memorial stages a quieter but no less potent light ritual. The statue of Lincoln sits precisely aligned so that on the morning of Martin Luther King Jr. Day, the rising sun streams through the columns to illuminate the Emancipation Proclamation carved into the wall behind him. It's no coincidence this happens in January. The cold, clear light of winter carries a clarity summer's haze could never achieve. The architects didn't just position a statue, they orchestrated an annual moment where natural light performs civic memory, tying the struggle for civil rights to the nation's foundational ideals. Even sacred spaces get politicized through light. When Emperor Justinian first entered Constantinople's Hagia Sophia in 537, he reportedly fell to his knees, not just at the sight of the dome, but at how the morning sun struck the altar. The Byzantines understood that light could sanctify authority, hence the 40 windows piercing the dome's base, creating a golden mist that made the emperor's ceremonies look divinely ordained. Centuries later, the Ottomans would repurpose the same building, adding calligraphic medallions that caught the light from new angles, symbolizing Islam's triumph without altering a single stone. What these examples share is a recognition that light isn't neutral. Whether it's the torchlit marches of medieval kings or the laser shows of modern inaugurations, those who control illumination shape perception. The next time you see a monument bathed in spotlights or a public square designed to funnel sunlight onto a podium, ask yourself, what's being magnified and what's being cast into shadow? Because architecture's greatest trick isn't just playing with light and dark. It's convincing us their distribution is inevitable. Restoring ancient architecture isn't just about repairing cracks, it's about preserving conversations with sunlight that began centuries ago. Take Charter's Cathedral, where a simple window cleaning in the 1990s sparked outrage. Centuries of candle smoke, pollution, and organic growth had softened the stained glass into a hazy dreamscape, muting the colors but adding depth. When conservators removed this patina, the windows blazed with their original brilliance, technically more authentic, yet strangely unfamiliar to generations who'd grown up with the gentler glow. This tension between purity and perception reveals a deeper truth. Sometimes history accumulates not just in stone, but in the very quality of light a space holds. Modern technology offers solutions and new dilemmas. At the Pantheon, laser scans now track micron-level erosion around the Oculus, where 2,000 years of rain and wind have subtly altered the opening's edge. Even a millimeter's deviation could distort the solstice light patterns ancient Romans engineered with such precision. But should restorers correct this wear, returning the Oculus to its original dimensions, or preserve the marks of time? It's a question without easy answers. Similarly, UV filtering glass now shields medieval windows from the sun's bleaching rays, but purists argue these coatings change how light passes through modern molecules, mediating an ancient dialogue. Some interventions walk this tightrope with poetic ingenuity. Venice's Palazzo Ducale faced fading frescoes in rooms where sunlight hadn't touched the walls in ages. Instead of artificial lighting, conservators installed precisely angled mirrors on nearby buildings, capturing natural light and bouncing it back through original windows. The result, sunbeams once again illuminate Titian's pigments exactly as they did in the 16th century, same angle, same intensity, without a single watt of electricity. In Rajasthan, traditional lime plaster formulas, rediscovered through oral histories, now repair jolly screens, their microscopic pores scattering light just as they did when Mughal artisans first mixed them with yogurt and crushed seashells. Yet every choice carries consequences. When Spain's Mezquita Cathedral replaced its aging stained glass, the new panes used identical medieval techniques but lacked the subtle imperfections, the bubbles and striations that gave the originals their ethereal shimmer. The colors matched, but the light felt different, flattening what had once been a multidimensional glow. Conversely, London's Westminster Abbey took the opposite approach with its chapter house restoration, deliberately leaving some windows unrestored to preserve their light archive, the accumulated grime and weathering that whisper how centuries of sunlight have touched the space. Perhaps the most profound challenge lies in distinguishing preservation from embalming. The Alhambra's mock Arabs, those honeycombed stalactite vaults, are being rebuilt with 3D printed replicas where originals crumbled. The forms are perfect, the shadows mathematically identical. But does a resin cast, however precise, carry the same weight as stone carved by a Nasrid craftsman feeling his way by lamplight? In Kyoto, where the Golden Pavilion was rebuilt after a 1950 arson attack, craftsmen deliberately varied the gold leaf's thickness, knowing uniformity would deaden the play of light across its surface. The replica isn't a forgery, it's a reincarnation honoring not just the pavilion's form but its luminous soul. This dance between authenticity and adaptation isn't new. When Rome's St. Peter's Basilica replaced its ancient bronze doors in the 15th century, the new panels mimicked the original's patina, recognizing that verdigris wasn't decay, it was part of the door's story. Today's restorers face the same balancing act with light. Do we freeze architecture in amber or allow it to keep conversing with the sun on evolving terms? The answer, perhaps, lies in listening not just to historians and spectrometers, but to the spaces themselves. Because when morning light slips through a restored rose window or glides across a carefully cleaned mosaic, the truest test isn't how closely it matches old sketches, but whether it still makes the heart ache just a little, proof that the magic, however maintained, remains alive. Digital reconstructions are rewriting history, not in textbooks but in light itself. Imagine slipping on a VR headset and suddenly standing in the Athenian agora at noon, 2,500 years ago. The Parthenon's columns aren't the bleached white we know today, but blazing with mineral pigments, ochre reds, lapis blues, gilded details catching the Mediterranean sun like scattered coins. This isn't fantasy. Projects like Digital Acropolis use spectral analysis of microscopic paint traces to recreate exact hues, then simulate how sunlight would have animated them across a summer's day. The effect is revelatory. Those so-called classical white marbles, they were never meant to be seen that way. The ancients built for color, for contrast, for shadows that danced across painted reliefs like actors on a stage. Now cross the Atlantic to Cahokia, where virtual reconstructions breathe life into a different kind of solar theater. LiDAR scans have mapped the precise positions of the city's wooden henge posts, revealing how they framed the equinox sunrise over the Grand Mound. In VR, you can stand where a Mississippian priest once did, watching dawn light spear through the timber circle to ignite the central plaza's red clay. The simulation goes further, adjusting for atmospheric conditions from tree cover to ancient humidity levels, showing how smoke from morning fires would have diffused the light into a hazy, sacred glow. These aren't just pretty pictures, they're time machines, letting us experience celestial alignments as living rituals rather than archaeological footnotes. The Maya left no instruction manuals for their light shows, but their stones remember. At Chichen Itza, 3D scans of El Caracol's spiral tower show its narrow windows align not just with Venus's extremes, but with the planet's 8-year cycle of disappearance and reappearance. Digital tools let us speed up time, watching how shadows crawl across carved markers to track celestial events the Maya considered omens. Meanwhile, in Cambodia, photogrammetry of Angkor Wat's bas-reliefs reveals how low monsoon light would have made certain scenes appear as shadows receded, a storytelling technique literally written in sunlight. What's revolutionary isn't just seeing these effects, but feeling them. Haptic feedback in some VR reconstructions lets you touch shadows, sense the temperature difference between sun-warmed and shaded stone in a Roman bathhouse, or feel the sudden coolness stepping beneath the jolly screens of a Mughal palace. Projects like Scan the World take this tactile approach further, 3D printing scaled models of Notre Dame's gargoyles or Borobudur's stupas to study how their intricate carvings cast shadows at different latitudes. Holding these replicas under artificial sunlight, researchers have discovered previously unnoticed patterns, like how the folds of a Buddha's robe at Ellora were angled to create moving shadows as lamp flames flickered during night rituals. The most profound impact may be democratization. Apps like Sun Seeker overlay ancient alignments onto modern cityscapes, revealing how a shopping mall in Mexico City sits atop the Aztec Templo Mayor's solar axis. Augmented reality filters let students project reconstructed polychrome onto Greek statues in real time, watching how cinnabar reds deepened under Athenian twilight. These tools don't just preserve the past, they make it conversational, turning every smartphone into a portal where the dance of light and shadow continues across centuries. When a child in London can hold up their tablet to see how winter solstice light once struck Stonehenge's altar stone, or a tourist in Rome watches Nero's golden houses rotating dining room ceiling work again via AR, the ancients' luminous legacy isn't just studied, it's lived. Perhaps that's the true gift of these digital resurrections. They remind us that great architecture was never static. The Parthenon's painters, the Maya's astronomer priests, the Gothic masons who calculated stained glass angles to the minute, they all built for time's flow, for light's endless reinvention. Now, through ones and zeros, we're learning to see their creations not as frozen relics, but as performances paused mid-scene, waiting for the sun's next cue to continue the show. Light doesn't just help us see, it rewires how we feel. step into a Romanesque chapel where the low, flickering glow of candlelight pools in the crevices of vaulted ceilings, and something primal shifts in your brain. Neuroscientists have found that dim, warm lighting like this triggers the release of melatonin, slowing our heart rate and pulling us into a state of quiet reflection. It's no accident that these spaces feel like sanctuaries. Their light is literally designed to quiet the mind. Now contrast that with the sudden vertigo of standing in a Gothic cathedral, where shafts of light pierce down from clerestory windows high above. That vertical rush of illumination activates our amygdala, the brain's ore center, creating a visceral sense of the sublime that's been exploited by everyone from medieval bishops to modern theme park designers. Hospitals have turned these discoveries into healing tools. In Sweden's Karolinska Institute, patient rooms simulate the full arc of daylight, starting with cool blue tones at dawn to combat morning grogginess, shifting to bright white for midday alertness, then fading into amber by evening to prepare the body for rest. The results are startling. Patients in these rooms need fewer painkillers and recover faster than those under static lighting. Even the shadows are calibrated. Softer edges reduce the disorientation that harsh hospital lights can cause. Schools are following suit. Classrooms in Finland now use tunable LED systems that adjust brightness based on the subject being taught. Math lessons get crisp, high-contrast light to sharpen focus, while art classes bask in a warmer glow to encourage creativity. Retailers have been covert psychologists of light for decades. Walk into a high-end jewelry store, and you'll find diamonds illuminated by precisely angled spotlights that create tiny rainbows around each stone, a halo effect that makes gems seem to glow from within. Grocery stores, meanwhile, produce in light with a slight green tint, making vegetables appear fresher, while bakeries opt for golden tones that evoke the warmth of a hearth. Casinos take this manipulation further, using a constant, shadowless glare to erase any sense of time passing. No clocks, no windows, just an endless noon that keeps wallets open. This neurological dimension adds new urgency to preserving historic lightscapes. When we lose a medieval chapel to careless renovation or replace stained glass with uniform LED panels, we're not just altering aesthetics, we're severing a sensory lifeline to the past. Those precise ratios of shadow and radiance in a Byzantine church or a Ming Dynasty courtyard aren't arbitrary. They're crystallized emotional wisdom, ways of feeling that our ancestors encoded in stone and glass. Modern lighting can replicate lux levels and color temperatures, but it often misses the texture of historical light. The way candle smoke softens edges, or how centuries of hand-polished wood absorbs and releases sunlight like a slow breath. Perhaps most fascinating is how these effects bypass culture and language. Studies at the University of Tokyo found that people from vastly different backgrounds, Japanese office workers, Maasai herdsmen, Brazilian fishermen, all described the light in Gothic cathedrals as holy and Roman bathhouse lighting as luxurious, despite having no prior exposure to these architectures. It suggests that certain light-shape combinations tap into universal psychologies, hardwired responses that transcend time and place. When a Baroque architect curved a ceiling to diffuse candlelight in a specific pattern, or when a Mughal artisan carved marble screens to fracture sunlight into star shapes, they weren't just decorating, they were writing emotional code, waiting centuries for neuroscience to decipher it. The implications ripple beyond preservation. Urban planners are now studying medieval souks and Venetian alleys to understand how their organic light patterns reduce stress compared to the harsh grids of modern cities. Psychiatrists experiment with recreating the dappled forest light found in Shinto shrines to treat anxiety. Even filmmakers borrow from these ancient playbooks, The warm, low-angle glow in Renaissance paintings now shapes how cinematographers light intimate scenes. Everywhere we look, we're relearning what builders from Sharters to Kyoto always knew, that light isn't just something we see by. It's something we feel through, a silent collaborator in every human emotion, from reverence to desire, from terror to peace. And in those rare places where historic light still dances as intended, we don't just witness history, we feel it in our bones. The future of architecture isn't just about building smarter, it's about learning to listen to light again. Take Zimbabwe's Eastgate Center, where architect Mick Pierce studied termite mounds to solve a modern problem. These intricate structures stay cool in blistering heat without air conditioning, thanks to clever ventilation channels that mimic the mound's porous design. The result, a building that uses 90% less energy than its glass-walled neighbors, proving sustainability doesn't require cutting-edge tech, just a willingness to learn from nature's billion-year-old playbook. Meanwhile, Barcelona's Torre Glories takes a different approach, its LED-clad skin pulsing with real-time weather data. Rainstorms trigger cascades of blue light, while rising temperatures paint the tower in gradients of red, a high-tech homage to Gaudí's belief that architecture should breathe with its environment. But the real revolution may be happening at the molecular level. Photovoltaic glass, once a clunky afterthought, now blends seamlessly into facades, turning entire skyscrapers into vertical power plants. The Edge in Amsterdam takes this further, its sun-tracking smart windows adjusting tint and angle to maximize energy harvest while bathing workspaces in glare-free light. Yet the most promising innovations look backward for inspiration. Researchers at the University of Cambridge recently modeled the Pantheon's Oculus using climate simulation software, discovering its shape optimizes both illumination and airflow, a 2,000-year-old blueprint for passive design that outperforms modern algorithms. The challenge isn't just technical, it's emotional. How do you replicate the soul-stirring glow of Sharter's stained glass with solar panels? Maybe the answer lies in Venice, where artisans are reviving medieval glass techniques to create photovoltaic windows that scatter light like 13th-century cobalt. Or in Oman, where the new National Museum's smart mashrabiyah screens adjust to sunlight like ancient wooden lattices, but with hidden thin film solar cells woven into their patterns. Even traditional materials get futuristic twists: transparent wood composites that insulate like timber but let through 85% of light, or bioluminescent concrete that absorbs daylight to glow softly at night, echoing the moon-washed courtyards of Moorish palaces. Biomimicry offers the most poetic solutions. The lotus leaf self-cleaning surface inspired a coating that keeps solar panels dust-free in Dubai's deserts, while butterfly wing nanostructures informed a paint that cools buildings by reflecting infrared light. In Berlin, the BIQ house cultivates algae in its glass facade. The microorganisms not only generate biofuel but create living shadows that shift with the seasons, merging sustainability with artistry. Perhaps this is the next chapter in architecture's luminous legacy, structures that don't just borrow light but breathe with it, as responsive to their environment as a Gothic cathedral's stones are to the passing sun. The greatest designs have always danced between innovation and tradition. Now, as the planet demands reinvention, the light that guided ancient builders may yet show us the way forward. Light is no longer something we simply observe, it's something we step into, shape, and even become part of. Olafur Eliasson's weather project didn't just fill the Tate Modern with golden haze. It turned visitors into silhouettes against an artificial sun, their shadows stretching across the floor like giants. People lay on their backs, arms outstretched, as if trying to touch the glowing orb above a collective moment of wonder that blurred the line between art and audience. This wasn't passive viewing, it was participation, a shared ritual where light became the medium for connection. James Turrell takes this further with his skyspacer's carefully carved chambers where the ceiling frames a single slice of sky. Sit inside at dawn or dusk, and the shifting colors transform the opening into a living canvas. But here's the twist: the experience changes with every viewer. A cloudy day turns the space into a moody abstraction, while clear twilight paints it in gradients of violet and gold. Turrell's work reveals a profound truth. Light isn't just seen, it's felt, and its meaning shifts with the weather, the time, and even the emotions we bring inside. Historic sites are joining this luminous conversation. At Angkor Wat, night tours use projection mapping to bathe ancient temples in cascading stories, mythological battles unfolding across thousand-year-old stone. One moment, the walls ripple with celestial dancers. The next, they're consumed by digital flames, only to cool into serene lotus patterns. It's not just spectacle, it's a dialogue between past and present, where modern tech whispers new layers onto ancient stones. Similar experiments light up Rome's Colosseum with holographic gladiators or cast Van Gogh's Starry Night across Prague's medieval alleys, proving that even the most venerable architecture can play with time when darkness falls. This shift reflects a deeper cultural current. For centuries, light in architecture was hierarchical, reserved for sacred spaces or imperial displays. Today's installations democratize it. TeamLab's borderless museums invite visitors to wade through rivers of digital blossoms that bloom underfoot, while Yayoi Kusama's infinity rooms turn each viewer into both observer and reflected subject, multiplied endlessly in mirrored light. These experiences ask us to reconsider who controls illumination and who gets to shape its story. The question isn't just can a building's meaning change with its lighting, but how that change rewrites our relationship to space. Take the Sydney Opera House. By day, its sails gleam like porcelain in the sun. By night, they become projection screens for indigenous art or climate activism. The structure remains, but its voice evolves with every beam of light. Even functional spaces join in, bridges that pulse with pedestrian footsteps, or smart streetlights that dim when no one's near, creating an urban rhythm as responsive as a heartbeat. What's emerging is a new language of light, one where architecture doesn't just stand under the sun, but dances with it and invites us all to join. Whether it's a child chasing shadows in a Turrell installation or a pilgrim watching lasers trace Buddhist sutras onto a temple wall, we're no longer bystanders to beauty. We're its co-authors, remixing radiance in real time, proving that the most enduring monuments aren't just made of stone, they're made of shared moments, fleeting and luminous, that linger long after the lights fade. The glow of a city at night has long been a symbol of progress. Twinkling skyscrapers, illuminated monuments, streets bathed in the warm hum of neon. But beneath this brilliance lies a hidden cost, one that stretches far beyond inflated electricity bills. Light pollution has quietly become one of the most pervasive yet overlooked environmental challenges of our time. Consider the simple act of gazing upward. Where ancient civilizations navigated by constellations and wove myths into the Milky Way's arc, 2/3 of humanity now lives under skies so washed with artificial light that the stars have all but vanished. The consequences ripple far deeper than lost poetry. Migratory birds, guided by moonlight for millennia, circle brightly lit towers until exhaustion claims them. Sea turtle hatchlings, evolutionarily programmed to scurry toward the ocean's moonlit shimmer, now veer inland, lured by street lamps to certain death. Even our own biology suffers. Studies link excessive nighttime light exposure to disrupted sleep cycles and heightened risks of chronic illness, as the artificial glare tricks our brains into perpetual twilight. The battle to reclaim the night is already underway, with surprising pioneers leading the charge. Francis Loy Royer, enacted in 1973, might seem an unlikely environmental milestone, but its mandate for shopfront blackouts after 1 a.m. has slashed urban energy waste while gifting Parisians something unexpected: glimpses of the cosmos. Meanwhile, in Arizona's Sonoran Desert, the Kitt Peak National Observatory operates under lighting protocols so stringent that even flashlights must be red-filtered to preserve the delicate balance of darkness. These pockets of resistance reveal a paradox. The very societies that pioneered electric light are now forced to legislate its retreat. Heritage sites find themselves at the heart of this tension. When Florence's Cathedral unveiled a state-of-the-art lighting system in 2020, critics lambasted the installation for bleaching the subtle hues of Giotto's frescoes beneath its dome. The project's cool white LEDs, chosen for energy efficiency, inadvertently flattened the building's medieval warmth into something resembling a hospital corridor. Similar debates rage at the Acropolis, where the Parthenon's nightly illumination creates a halo of sky glow visible for miles, a breathtaking spectacle that astronomers argue comes at the cost of Athens' last remaining dark skies. The irony is palpable. Our attempts to showcase history often obscure the very celestial rhythms that guided its creators, yet solutions emerge where technology meets tradition. In Norway's Arjukan Valley, mirrors mounted on mountain slopes redirect natural sunlight to the town square during winter's polar night, proving illumination needn't always mean electricity. Motion-sensitive LEDs now guard the pathways of Cambodia's Angkor Wat, awakening only as visitors approach, their gentle glow calibrated to avoid drowning out the fireflies that have danced there since the Khmer Empire. Perhaps most promising are circadian lighting systems, like those in Toronto's Path underground network, which mimic the sun's natural progression from dawn's cool blues to dusk's amber tones, reducing energy use while respecting human biology. These innovations hint at a future where light serves rather than dominates, where cities might glow like constellations viewed from space, their patterns purposeful rather than profligate. The challenge isn't to banish artificial light, but to relearn its use as the ancients did, as a brushstroke, not a floodlight. After all, the Gothic architects who charted stained glass placements by the solstice sun understood something we're only now rediscovering. True brilliance lies not in overwhelming darkness, but in conversing with it. There's a hush that falls over the crowd at Morocco's Hassan Roman II Mosque just before sunset, when the last rays of the day strike the glass floor panels, revealing the Atlantic's turquoise waves thrashing beneath their feet. This is the blue hour, a fleeting moment when architecture and nature collide in a spectacle so visceral, visitors often describe it as a spiritual encounter. Across the globe, similar rituals unfold. Early risers huddled in the pre-dawn chill at Newgrange, their breath visible in the cold air as they wait for that singular beam of solstice light to pierce the tomb's ancient passage. These aren't just tourist attractions, they've become secular shrines, places where light transforms from a physical phenomenon into something deeply personal. What's fascinating is how social media has reshaped these pilgrimages. A hashtag like #GoldenHourTravel doesn't just document beauty, it creates a roadmap for seekers. Someone in Tokyo sees a post of dawn light filtering through the marble jollies of Rajasthan's Ranakpur temple, and suddenly, a trip to India gains purpose beyond sightseeing. But there's a tension here. For every awe-struck visitor who sits quietly in Sharter's Cathedral, tracing the migration of stained glass colors across the floor. There's another elbowing for the perfect shot. The irony, these luminous moments were designed for stillness, not screens. Yet beneath the Instagram aesthetics lies a profound truth. When a Japanese tourist and a German backpacker both gasp as sunlight ignites the golden mosaics of Ravenna's Basilica di San Vitale, they're participating in a tradition far older than social media. Centuries ago, Byzantine worshippers knelt beneath those same mosaics, equally transfixed. The shared language isn't faith or culture, it's light itself. Modern travelers retracing the steps of medieval pilgrims along Spain's Camino de Santiago rediscover this daily. How the morning sun turns simple fog into a luminous veil over Galicia's hills, or how candlelight in Burgos Cathedral makes stone saints seem to breathe. Some journeys even defy logic. Take the Stairway to Heaven phenomenon in Hawaii, where hikers brave illegal trails for a chance to stand above the clouds at sunrise. The risk isn't just about adrenaline, it's about witnessing light in its purest form, unfiltered by civilization. Similarly, in Iran's Lut Desert, travelers trek to the Calots at dawn, when the wind-sculpted ridges cast shadows so sharp they resemble a frozen tsunami. These places offer no Wi-Fi, no amenities, just the raw, untranslatable experience of standing where earth and light perform their oldest dance. Perhaps the most poignant pilgrimages are the quietest. In Kyoto, locals practice Shinrin-yoku forest bathing not just for health, but to observe how light filters through maple leaves in Arashiyama's bamboo groves, a different spectacle every hour. In Iceland, entire families drive through winter nights chasing the aurora, not for photos, but to feel its glow ripple across their faces like cold fire. These moments can't be hashtagged or even fully explained. They're echoes of something primal, a reminder that long before cameras or algorithms, humans gathered at Stonehenge, at Machu Picchu, at Petra, united by the simple, sacred act of watching light rewrite the world. You don't need marble columns or stained glass to harness the magic of light. Your home is already full of untapped potential. Start with something as simple as a strategically placed mirror. Angle it to catch the morning sun, and suddenly, your coffee nook becomes a stage for sunrise's golden hour, painting your walls with the same luminous drama as a Baroque chapel. Or watch how a potted fern's leaves cast ever-shifting lace patterns across your desk, echoing the dappled play of light through a Moroccan mashrabiyah screen. These aren't just decorating tricks, they're micro-adjustments that reconnect your space to rhythms older than electricity. The Japanese concept of wabi-sabi invites us to find beauty in light's fleeting imperfections. Notice how afternoon sun highlights the cracks in an old wooden table, or how a chipped vase scatters prismatic rainbows when backlit. Instead of masking these flaws, lean into them. A sheer curtain with a loose weave will filter sunlight into soft, uneven ripples, turning your living room into a canvas of organic shadows. Meanwhile, Scandinavian Hig teaches us to embrace warmth over wattage, swap harsh overhead LEDs for a cluster of candles in varying heights, their flicker mimicking the intimate glow of a medieval hearth. The goal isn't replication, it's resonance, letting historical wisdom inform modern moments. Technology, when used thoughtfully, can amplify these ancient principles. Smart bulbs programmed to shift from cool blue at dawn to amber at dusk don't just reduce eye strain, they recreate the Pantheon's celestial clock on your ceiling. Motion-activated floor lights that guide midnight footsteps with a gentle glow. They're the distant cousins of Venetian mirror stairs, bouncing illumination where it's needed without banishing nighttime's quiet mystery. Even your smartphone can become a tool for intentional design. Apps like Sun Surveyor track solar angles specific to your latitude, helping you position furniture to maximize winter light or summer shade. just as Mughal architects plotted palace courtyards. The real secret lies in observation. Spend a day noting how light moves through your space. Where does the noon sun pool like liquid gold on your kitchen tiles? Which corner stays stubbornly dark, begging for a reflective surface or a strategically placed glass brick? Play with texture. A rattan lampshade will cast intricate shadow webs, while a polished copper tray can bounce light onto your ceiling like a miniature Alhambra dome. Even clutter can become collaborator. A row of water glasses on a windowsill becomes a prism orchestra at sunrise, scattering rainbows that migrate across your walls. This isn't about achieving Instagram-perfect aesthetics. It's about cultivating what monks call lux humana, human light, the kind that doesn't just illuminate but comforts, inspires, and occasionally surprises. When you pause to watch evening light gild the steam from your teacup, or arrange bookshelves to frame a sunset view, you're participating in a tradition that stretches from Stone Age cave dwellers to Tadao Ando. Great light design doesn't demand grand gestures, just the willingness to see your home not as a static box, but as a living collaborator with the sun. Light becomes a different kind of architect during disasters, one that sketches safety in the dark, maps hope in uncertainty, and stitches communities back together with beams instead of bricks. After the Black Death emptied Florence's streets in the 17th century, survivors hung paper lanterns outside their homes, transforming the city into a constellation of trembling flames. This wasn't just illumination, it was a collective exhale, a way to say, we're still here. Today, the annual Rifacolona parade carries that memory forward, children hoisting lanterns shaped like moons and stars through the same alleys where plague once lurked. The tradition endures because light in crisis is never just functional, it's the first language of resilience. Modern emergencies have sharpened this dialogue. In Syrian refugee camps, solar-powered LED strings don't just push back the night, they redraw the boundaries of dignity. A single light bulb becomes a classroom for children studying after sunset, a beacon for medical tents, a signal that normalcy hasn't completely vanished. Architects like Shai Druban have taken this further, designing emergency shelters with translucent walls that harness daylight by morning and glow softly at night, blending practicality with psychological solace. Meanwhile, in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria, artists turned collapsed power grids into canvases, projecting films onto the sides of darkened buildings and floating solar-powered lanterns down rivers. These weren't just protests against government failure, they were reclaimings of darkness itself, proof that light could be conjured even when systems failed. History whispers that disasters often birth the most inventive lighting. London's Great Fire of 1666 led to wider streets lined with oil lamps, reducing both fire risk and crime, a double victory etched in flame. Similarly, the blackouts of World War II sparked innovations like moonlight towers in Berlin, where diffused blue light mimicked natural moonlight to confuse bombers while still guiding civilians. Today's challenges demand even smarter solutions. In earthquake-prone Tokyo, buildings incorporate electroluminescent paint along stairwells, ensuring exit paths glow without electricity. California's wildfire zones see dark sky communities designing light fixtures that minimize glare for evacuees while reducing light pollution for wildlife. The deeper lesson lies in flexibility. Gothic cathedrals stored candles in crypts for funerals during storms. Venetian palazzos kept mirrored lanterns ready to redirect candlelight during floods. This duality, light as both routine and emergency tool, echoes in contemporary designs like the Lumen AID solar inflatable lanterns, flat-packed like ancient parchment but swelling into luminous orbs when disaster strikes. Perhaps the most poignant evolution is in hospice architecture, where adjustable LEDs now simulate sunrise for patients who can't go outside, or auroras for those who will never see the Arctic. Here, light doesn't just adapt to crisis, it transcends it, offering not just visibility, but visions of beauty when the world feels most fragile. What emerges from these stories isn't just a history of survival, but a blueprint for humanity's relationship with illumination. When infrastructure collapses, light becomes currency, comfort, and compass. The next era of design won't just ask how brightly we can shine, but how wisely, how kindly, and how resiliently we can glow when everything else goes dark. Artificial light may have banished the night, but at what cost? Walk through any modern city after sunset, and the glow of LEDs turns darkness into an afterthought, a convenience we scarcely notice until its absence. Yet this perpetual brightness comes with consequences science is only beginning to measure. The blue wavelengths dominating our screens and streetlights suppress melatonin, tricking our brains into believing the sun still hangs high. Sleep researchers call it social jet lag, a disconnect between our body's ancient rhythms and the unyielding glare of progress. Hospitals now report increased cases of insomnia in urban centers, where the night sky hasn't been truly dark for generations. Even nature rebels, migratory birds circle skyscrapers in exhausted loops, while fireflies, their mating signals drowned in artificial haze, vanish from suburbs they've inhabited for millennia. But the loss isn't just biological, it's cultural. In Spain, the annual Noche en Blanco festival once transformed Madrid into a labyrinth of candlelit courtyards and oil lamp processions. Today, those traditions compete with LED billboards and smartphone glare. Thailand's Loy Krathong, where thousands float banana leaf lanterns down rivers to honor water spirits, now contends with light pollution that obscures the very stars central to its mythology. These aren't mere aesthetic shifts, they're ruptures in communal memory, severing ties to rituals that once synchronized human lives with lunar cycles and seasonal dark. The Maori of New Zealand articulate this beautifully, framing starlight as taonga, a sacred treasure. Their legal battle to designate Aotearoa's skies as protected cultural heritage isn't about nostalgia. It's asserting that identity lies as much in the patterns of Mataraki's constellation as in language or land. Architects stand at a crossroads. Some, like Helsinki's Light Lab, pioneer circadian lighting that mimics the sun's daily arc, cool blues at dawn, warm ambers at dusk, rewiring buildings to harmonize with human biology. Others argue for a bolder approach, treating artificial light as its own medium. James Turrell's sky spaces manipulate perception through controlled illumination, while Tokyo's digital art museums use LEDs to create environments no natural light could replicate. The tension here mirrors a deeper philosophical divide. Should technology adapt to our evolutionary past or liberate us from it? Perhaps balance lies in hybrid solutions. In Norway's Longyearbyen, where winter brings months of polar night, light therapy facades simulate sunrise on building exteriors, combating seasonal depression without erasing the stars above. Meanwhile, Tucson's streetlights designed with input from Tohono O'odham elders use selective amber wavelengths to reduce sky glow while preserving indigenous astronomy practices. These examples suggest a middle path, light that serves without dominating, illuminates without erasing. After all, the magic of darkness has always been its contrast, the way a single candle flicker holds more weight in a blackened room than a floodlit hall. In reclaiming the right to shadows, we might just rediscover what makes light worth having at all. For all our innovations, from LED algorithms to photovoltaic glass, we still instinctively catch our breath when dawn light strikes an ancient column or candle flames ripple across a vaulted ceiling. These moments transcend time, connecting a medieval stonemason calculating solstice angles to a modern office worker pausing as sunset gilds their glass tower. The miracle isn't just that these techniques endure, but that they still speak. A Baroque chapel's golden shaft of light stirs awe in someone who's never heard of Bernini, just as a Japanese shoji screen's muted glow soothes a visitor unfamiliar with wabi-sabi. Light bypasses language, doctrine, and era to touch something primal in us. Consider the humble doorway, a feature every culture builds, yet each imbues with luminous meaning. In a feng shui home, the entry channels morning light to energize the household. In a Moroccan riad, it frames a courtyard pool's dappled reflections. In a Gothic cathedral, it funnels pilgrims from shadow into radiant nave. Different solutions, same human instinct to mark transitions with light. Even our metaphors confess this kinship. We speak of seeing the light for enlightenment, of dark times for struggle. Architecture simply makes these abstractions physical, turning philosophy into spaces we can step inside. The urgency to preserve these luminous conversations grows as artificial glare homogenizes nights and screens dominate gaze. But resistance takes creative forms. In Norway's Arctic Circle, the Svart Hotel not only generates its own solar power, but angles its ring-shaped design to amplify winter's scarce light, creating a halo effect for aurora viewing. Meanwhile, Mexico City's Biblioteca Vasconcelos suspends glass-floored bookshelves to let sunlight filter through literature, layered walkways, a literal illumination of knowledge. These projects prove tradition isn't about replicating the past, but reinventing its wisdom for new constraints. What ultimately unites a Neolithic tomb aligned to the solstice and a smart city's light-responsive facades is their shared acknowledgement. We are creatures shaped by the sun's rhythm. Our greatest buildings have always been clocks, not of gears but of shadows and radiance, measuring time in beams creeping across stone. When we lose this dialogue, we don't just forfeit beauty, we disconnect from the cosmic pulse that guided our ancestors. Yet every time we adjust blinds to soften afternoon glare or arrange chairs to catch winter sun, we participate in that eternal exchange. So look closer when light moves you, not just at the beam but the surface it grazes. The pitted marble of a Renaissance courtyard scattering diamonds of brightness, the uneven warp of handmade glass bending a rainbow onto pews, it's in these textures that the deepest truth resides. Perfection doesn't inspire wonder, the interplay does. A world without shadows would be blinding, a world without light invisible. And in that tension, as in all great architecture, we find not just function but meaning written not in stone or steel, but in the delicate, daily dance between glow